Hello ladies and gentlemen, and a very warm welcome back from the summer to the first webinar for our European audience focusing on purchase to pay. So I'm very pleased to have with us today two experts from Basware, and in particular they're going to be looking at the 5 golden rules to mastering purchase to pay automation. Their story will be looking in particular at the ADT Tyco story. So I extend to you a very warm welcome indeed, and looking forward to this webinar in particular. My name is Susie West, and I founded sharedserviceslink.com what is now 4 years ago, which we're all very excited about. And our single aim as an organisation is to extend to the finance and accounting shared services market best practice information. And we do that through extending best practice through webinars such as this one today, through conferences and masterclasses, and through our website. There has been a recent development on our website, and I'm very glad to say that Basware has played a key role in this. We have launched very recently the Solutions Directory. It's a part of our website which has been put together with the end user very much in mind. And what it is it's a part of our site where you have a listing of the solutions that are out there specifically to help you in finance shared services. So I urge you to log on after this webinar and have a look at our solutions directory. You can see Basware there in the Premier listing, and you'll be able to find out a bit more about them and also other solutions in the purchase to pay market. So let's have a look at what the next 60 minutes looks like and what the agenda is looking like. I'm going to touch briefly on how this session works, and then look a little bit at the intention of this session, and then I'll be passing directly over to our panelists for today, and then be taking your questions in the last 10 minutes of the webinar. So in terms of how the session works, GoToWebinar is a very straightforward platform, but should you have any technical issues, we do have technical support on the line to help you. You just need to let us know what your concern is by keying it into the free text box within your GoToWebinar panel, and we will respond to that immediately. Really importantly, purchase to pay continues to be such a significant front-of-mind topic for shared services leaders, and I urge you to use this session as an opportunity to get questions that have been nagging you answered. How that works, again, very straightforward. Use your free text panel in your GoToWebinar box and put your question in that, submit it to me, and I will take those questions and put those questions to the experts in the last 10 minutes of the webinar. Sooner you get them to me, the more likely it is that they will be asked. So do make sure right now, if you can write down 1 or 2 things that you're really looking to get from this, and let's make sure that they're answered, and if they're not, please do use the question time for that. Now let's have a look at the intention of this session. So many of you will be familiar with the idea that shared services really is an organizational model or institution that has been set up or was set up and was used right from the inception of shared services about 20 years ago for some organizations, specifically to improve the accounts payable process. And now we don't really talk about accounts payable anymore. We talk about purchase to pay, mainly because organizations have recognized that AP in isolation can only do so much. If we look at AP as a single tower, if you will, we can only do so much in terms of process improvement. So if we really want to go that extra mile, finance and procurement really do need to align, which is why a lot of organizations now are referring to the process flow as a single process, and very much to the tune of purchase to pay. So purchase to pay and shared services is pretty much one and the same. You really don't get a shared services organization that doesn't deal with purchase invoices. So this means that the success of your shared services is often determined by the performance of your purchase to pay operation. And what I've realized over the past 10 or so years, certainly over the last 7 or 8, is that working closely with shared services organisations, the ones that are doing things which make their shared services organisations exceptional, they're following certain best practice rules. And what we're looking to do with you today is to really extend some of those key rules with you to help you go away and improve your purchase to pay performance. And before we do that, and before I invite our first speaker to give us his insight, I'm going to be asking you a poll question. So, poll question number 1 to kick off this webinar, being launched on your screens right now. How many invoices do you process per annum? Is it less than 250,000? Between 250,000 and 500,000, between 500,000 and 750,000, 750,000 to 1 million invoices, or do you process more than 1 million invoices? So what we're looking for here is over 70% response rate, and we're currently at 44. So if you haven't ticked the box, please do so. We do utilize these polls as benchmarking opportunities, and the more of you that respond, the more meaningful the benchmarking data. So we're at 69%, over 73% now, so closing the polls in 3, 2, 1, and we're at 78%. Thank you very much for that. Let's have a look at the results. Coming up on your screen now, you can see an interesting mix there. So 34% in the lower bracket. Now we've intentionally put the ceiling of the lower bracket, if you will, quite high. Normally we run it at 100,000, so this is quite a high ceiling for the lowest bracket there. 34% of you coming in at 250,000 invoices per annum or less, but we do have just shy of 20% of you coming in with over 1 million invoices. So very interesting response there. Thank you very much. I'd now like to introduce our first presenter for today, Mr. Rob Rooney. Over to you, Rob, from Basware.
Okay, thank you very much, Susie. My name is Rob Rooney. I work for Basware. I'm going to present this on behalf of Steve Katona, who's the Accounts Payable Manager for the UK operations of Tyco International. So just a quick overview of Tyco International and some headlines. Tyco International Limited, as it's known, is a diversified and truly global company that provides electronic security, fire protection and detection products and services, which is obviously quite a diverse portfolio, I think you'd agree. So they present these solutions to customers in more than 60 countries, and they currently employ more than 100,000 employees worldwide, and it's known as a current market leader in all of its operating markets. Just some brief headlines about the history of Tyco International. They were founded in 1960 by a chap called Arthur J. Rosenberg, who opened a laboratory to conduct experimental research on behalf of the US government. They went public in 1964, and in 1974 they were listed on the New York Stock Exchange, and this is when their strategy was decided upon, which was to grow through acquisition. Over the next 4 decades, Tyco became a much bigger and more diverse company, with current annual revenues of more than $20 billion. And much of this growth was and is still achieved through acquisitions, including some names you may have heard of. Organisations like Grinnell Fire Protection Systems, Wormold International, ADT, which is a well-known name in the UK, a leading provider of electronic security systems, Sensormatic in 2001, which is the world's leading retail security firm, making through this acquisition Tyco the largest fire alarm company in the world. Then in 2006, Tyco Board of Directors approved a plan to separate the company's portfolio of businesses into 3 separate publicly traded companies. Tyco Healthcare, now known as Covidien, which is also a Basware customer, Tyco Electronics, and finally Tyco International. 2011, the acquisition path still continues, with 4 new names added to the portfolio this year so far. So why did Tyco UK move to a shared service centre business model? The rationale was to achieve the following, as Susie introduced us to already, was to centralise, to standardise and consolidate the automation of the financial processes. In this case, we're talking about accounts payable and accounts receivable. Procurement currently within Tyco UK is still an autonomous function. Typically, this shared service centre concept can reduce the cost of financial processes by anywhere between 30 and 50%. But the drivers for Tyco were not just cost focused, they wanted to improve processes, gain better visibility and improve control. In general, shared services are changing and evolving as companies realise that it's a highly effective tool when it's optimised, and the reasons for change for Tyco were quite obvious for all to see. Disparate operations, an out-of-date service model that didn't align itself to the M&A activity of the corporate functions, many people performing the same actions with many manual touch points, all this leading to a costly process. Overhead costs were spiralling out of control due to the fragmented processes, and there was certainly no evidence of any best practice. ADT quickly realised three things were needed: people, process and technology, and there had been a distinct lack of investment in the latter. UK operations needed to look forward and embrace the concept of shared services by realigning the business and looking at technology as an enabler. The invoice process was the most obvious to start with. So a little bit more about the Manchester Shared Services itself and their current shared service centre landscape. The Manchester SSC was formed in 2007, and on inception they processed 350,000 supplier invoice. This invoice volume is planned to grow to circa 500,000 over the next 2 years, and other functions within AP include supplier payments, balance sheet reconciliations, and with regard to organisational structure, they currently process invoices for 7 Tyco Group companies, with the current project ongoing for another 3 and with many more on the horizon, some of which you can see on the screen in front of you. The vision for the future for shared services was, as said previously, to embrace the shared service concept and put what was deemed at the time to be the right foundations in place to work towards their vision with regards to systems and solutions, process redesign and the overall org structure. Other improvements undertaken alongside technology and systems were the introduction of a service improvement register, a structured approach and investment in staff training. Mapping to this was a more in-depth recruitment procedure, putting the emphasis on right, fit, first time and longevity. Communication also had to be improved across all areas, as people were just doing what was needed to survive, and an insular approach was the norm. Finally, the shared service centre model was to be at the forefront of the UK Centre of Excellence, enabling its future growth and development. So their process as was is the following. To aid Tyco to understand the extent of the problem, they undertook an as-is analysis study, which is good practice for anyone, which documented the point-in-time process and highlighted any issues, bottlenecks and/or non-conformity. The main elements uncovered for all to see and were fully visible to the entire organisation. There was a distinct lack of technology in use. Pretty much every step in the AP function was manual and paper-based and had many multiple touch points, many duplicated, some triplicated. It was deemed to be very old school in its current strategy and not what was expected from a global company such as Tyco. The decentralised business model was not helping, with 40 sites in the UK alone. This made any approval exception handling process extremely labour intensive and provided them with less than zero visibility into any area of the financial transaction. The business also was not serving its internal stakeholders and suppliers at all, and both were creating an abnormally high number of complaints and escalations. The AP function was drowning and was working in a very inefficient manner, just fighting fires as and when they appeared, and something had to change. So, automation. Decisions had to be made. Which processes to automate and why? What was the most obvious choice for automation? And where would Tyco themselves get the quickest wins? The AP function was selected for this as it met all the above criteria. It was the most obvious choice for Tyco as this provided the quickest wins, killing 2 birds with 1 stone, satisfying internal customers and suppliers alike, whilst also reducing costs. In choosing a business partner, Tyco went out to the market looking for that business partner who could meet their requirements for cost reduction, process efficiencies and increased visibility, allowing them to focus on their core line of business. Their approach to procurement was not unusual. This involved a tender process and the usual round of meetings, board meetings, etc. Tyco then decided on 8 key principles that would help them evaluate the pot of vendors. Firstly, define your processes and approach to automation. Secondly, involve the correct stakeholders, finance, procurement, IT and the business itself. And of course arrange reference visits. Seeing any solution in situ in the real world scenario is invaluable. Fourth point, Staffing, make sure that you select the vendor that has the staffing levels required to deliver to what can be a complex program. Investigate the supplier, do the required due diligence, check the financials, their track record, and an obvious evaluation point is cost. What is the total cost of ownership of any said solution? Tyco were also keen to make sure that the solution put in place married to the continuing M&A activity and planned future growth, plus any future enhancements such as procurement, travel and expense management, and most importantly for Tyco was ERP migration and multi-ERP scenarios. Finally, the time to go live, this had to be fast but also had to be realistic. So what did they want to achieve from automation? Well, Tyco, through the good choices they'd made in centralizing functions, moving to a shared service center model, investing in people and training and sourcing good fit technology, have managed to turn a poorly performing function around, and they are now a shared service, an SSC function who is sharing best practices with its peers instead of just reading about it in the press. The technology and solutions implemented were an enabler for change. They said the pain of centralization, they eased the pain, of centralization and migration from a fully manual process to a fully automated one. Tyco now have control and visibility of all invoices irrespective of ERP or back-end system in one central solution and repository. It has allowed them to restructure AP to suit the business rather than the tail wagging the dog, so to speak. An immediate reduction in headcount was realized. This was due to both factors, the shared service center model and the solution itself, and the total immediate savings were 20 FTEs. At last, they could also start to report and gather MI rather than the monthly Excel kung fu that was taking place. They finally realized the ability to run KPIs and also introduced SLAs to the business, which they are now overachieving. The automation model introduced a change of mindset within the UK business, and AP is no longer seen as a problem or a gatekeeper. It is now embraced by the business as they can see the improvement against their own workloads, allowing them to focus on the core line of business and not invoice processing or supplier reconciliations. The benefits realization for Tyco, what this meant to them regarding the realized proposed benefits, was year one cost reduction in excess of £400,000. This isn't taking into account any intangibles within the business case. The AP function now had full visibility into the process and the detail of each and every transaction, from point of receipt through to payment. All invoices, even those out with the business for approval or exception handling, are available and reportable to the AP function, allowing them to be more proactive as opposed to reactive, as was the case previously. AP realized another key milestone in processing, which was to reduce the invoice cycle time from weeks down to days. They now process invoices within a 5-day average. Further benefits were quality control and the ability to quickly see a problem when it arises, and also the ability to rectify it before it's too late, causing extra costs downstream. Lost invoices are now a thing of the past due to point of receipt scanning and archiving, which leads me on to an often overlooked benefit, which is the removal of physical archiving and the quick access to the digitized image and transaction. Tyco put together these 5 golden rules for P2P, and I'll just run you through these. Firstly, what they did is they believed that the first rule, the most important rule, is to put in place a project steering committee and involve them in the project, senior sponsors and local processing teams alike, and make sure everyone has buy-in to the concepts. Wine and dine them if it's needed. Project management, secondly, make sure you have the right person, team steering the project and managing it through to a successful conclusion. A ship also always needs a good captain. Thirdly, don't skimp on the design and scoping. Make sure that you're more than well versed in how things currently work. Only then can you think about a future state and the requirements. Fourthly, change management. Underestimate this at your peril, I think, is the key message. This is directly mapped to what your line of business is, and also the people and the volume of users involved. This in itself can be a project. Finally, look for a vendor who can provide you with a solution that only fits your current needs, but also your future requirements and those of the business. Now on to lessons learnt. Now, although the projects and shared service centre migration has been a resounding success, there have been some lessons learned. This has caused both parties to rethink the strategy for all future phases, and these have now been realised in phases 2 and 3. Number one, the change management exercise was underestimated, and the mindset of the business users who were used to doing things their way, so to speak, did not take well to the layers of automation we were implementing. They complained about the loss of control. Communications and training plans were radically overhauled to take all of this into account. Timescales of the original project did indeed lapse. Project management issues. Tyco were blighted by IT problems, many of which were tied back to the communication point made earlier. And one final lesson Tyco learned was to focus more on quick wins and core business model and not to unnecessarily customize any solution. So future expansion, what are Tyco looking to do next? Well, they're looking to expand the growth of the Tyco UK Shared Service Centre. They're busy internally selling this concept to the rest of Europe and EMEA, and also our partnership to the remaining Tyco business units. With the immediate future outlooks towards a total European, EMEA-wide rollout and consolidation of services, then the next step will obviously be a global plan, and South Africa is already in the mix. So regarding what to automate next to fall in line with that evolution of shared services, what's next for Tyco? Regarding what to automate next in the shared service centre model, they're looking to bring on the following solutions. Electronic invoicing for both inbound AP and outbound AR invoices, as well as supplier portal for invoice registration, invoice creation from PO, and invoice status self-service for its supply base. Also, there is a desire to move away from the in-house scanning technology and move towards an outsourced offer. Paul will be covering all this off in the following presentation. So thank you very much for your time, and I'd now like to hand you over to Susie.
Thank you very much indeed, Rob. So let's move on to the second poll question of the webinar coming up on your screens in the next couple of seconds. You all very kindly mentioned how many invoices you process on an annual basis. If you look at your full-time employees or full-time equivalents, how many FTEs process these invoices? So how many people have you got within your operation processing these purchase invoices? Is it 5 or less? Between 6 and 10? Between 11 and 15? Between 16 and 20? Or is it indeed 21 or more? Is it more than 20? So 63% of you have voted. So we're still waiting for a few more of you. In the earlier vote, we did have about 73% of you voting. So if you haven't done so, please do so now, and I will be closing the poll in 3, 2, 1, and we were at 71% there. So let's just share the information coming up on your screen now. So it's quite interesting. The statistics from earlier were marry a little bit. We have 34% processing under 250,000 invoices. And then we had, if you remember, 18% of you processing over 1 million invoices. So you can see here that we're a little bit top-heavy with 38% of you processing, having more than 20 FTEs in the team, but a bit of a spread there. So interesting stats, and now I'd like to introduce our second presenter of the session, and over to you, Paul Sanford.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to tell you a little bit more about Basware. We are a Finnish headquartered company. We have over 1,000 employees working for us globally. In the UK, we've got about 70 people working for us here from the Guildford and Knutsford office. We're a very successful company. We've seen significant growth in the 25 years that we've been formed. We're growing at around 10% per annum, and turnover for 2010 was over 100 million euros. We're a global organisation. We've got offices and business partners in 30 countries. We own one of the largest supplier networks globally. We currently have 320,000 suppliers and buyers connecting through this network. As Rob has alluded to, the automation path for e-invoicing and invoice automation will deliver greater levels of automation whilst at the same time reducing cost. And this is achieved through automating the accounts payable process, receiving electronic invoices from day one, and as I said, this will actually then mean that all invoices potentially can be automated whilst at the same time reducing costs. I'm now going to just show you a little bit more about some of the processes that our customers have implemented through this, this process flow here. So if we start from the supplier back office, what we're able to do is suppliers have different formats of XML, and the Basware electronic invoicing service is able to take any of those XML formats. The suppliers also, for 100% electronic invoices from day one, we offer the scan and capture outsourced service. So if we start from the right to left from the flow chart here, what we're able to do is, through connecting to suppliers' back office systems and through providing an outsourced scan and capture service, we're able to take those paper invoices and convert them to 100% of electronic invoices from day one. Now, the invoice data, whether it's been scanned or whether it comes through in an XML format, will go into our Basware E-invoicing network and back. And back. Okay, thank you. Yeah, so the other ways of getting electronic invoices into the network is for SMEs, smaller suppliers that don't have the technology to output an XML file, is through the supplier portal, where they can go on to a very intuitive supplier portal and just key in an invoice manually. As I said, that works particularly well for smaller suppliers. We also have a service where some suppliers can connect to a printer driver. So there's various different ways that we're able to connect suppliers to the network. Now, one of the key challenges is to adopt suppliers into the e-invoicing network and e-invoicing concept. And one of our key advantages as an organization is that we have an open network. So what we're able to do is we're able to enable buyers to receive invoices from suppliers that are connected either to our network but also to other e-invoicing networks. And currently there are 500 of these electronic networks globally. The timing for electronic invoicing at the moment, I'm not sure if people have seen the recent announcement from President Obama in the US, which is stated that all electronic invoices going into US government organizations need to be received electronically by 2014. And here in the UK, we are particularly bad at electronic invoicing. So in the UK, our research illustrates that we have around about 10% of organizations sending electronic invoices. So 10% of the volume is coming in electronic format and 90% is paper. We're from the Nordics, and 60 to 70% of invoices are being transmitted electronically. So we believe that there's going to be great growth in this area during the next 1 to 10 years. So just moving on again to continuing with this slide. Sorry. The XML invoice then comes into the Basware network. There's a handshake from our side with the customer's IT system, so we install a piece of software on the customer side. That's called the business transactions receiver. The invoices then can either go straight into the ERP system, or we can also provide an interim tool which will ensure that only correctly validated invoices will pass into the ERP system. So typically, some of the problems that we experience with customers is where it could be that there's no purchase order on the invoice. And if that's the case, then we're able to send back the invoice to the supplier stating, this invoice is non-compliant, please can you resend the invoice with a purchase order. Or it could be that the supplier details are incorrect, or it could be that the tax is incorrect. So this interim view, which we call Basware Invoice Admin Master, is a really nice interface that the AP use as a way of sort of sifting out the non-validated invoices before they go into the ERP system. Now we have a piece of middleware called the Basware ERP middleware, which allows us to effectively exchange data with ERP systems. And Basware, we've interfaced with over 220 different ERP systems globally. Rob mentioned about ADT. They've got, I think, 3 or 4 ERP systems. And one of the key things there is being able to have that central view of liabilities and commitments, which enables people at ADT to really help manage their cash flow commitments. So we're able to interface with all of the major ERPs, Oracle, SAP, Aggresso, Cedar, Coda, Microsoft, and we're able to do that in a single view, or we're able to interface with multiple ERPs. Okay, so then moving on to the next slide. So once the invoices then come into the Basware world, or as we talked about earlier on, if they go into the ERP system, the key thing that we're looking to do then is try to automate the process as much as possible. So invoices come in, you can see on the left-hand side here, they're coming in either through paper or through e-invoicing, but it doesn't matter. If you outsource the scan and capture, then you get 100% electronic invoices from day one. I will say as well that we can also provide in-house scanning solutions. However, when you look at the overall advantages for e-invoicing, it is generally more cost-effective to outsource. And the invoices come in and they run through the matching engine. What we're looking to do here, we're looking to try to match invoices against purchase orders and also what we call recurring invoices. So for recurring invoices, they can be as much as 30% in an organization. So they can be things like utilities, so rents, rates, and what we can do is we can set up a schedule within the Basware matching engine, and if the invoice comes in and it matches against either that schedule or a budget, then we can code the invoice and get it approved. So, for example, you can set up a rule that for £1,000 each month, if an invoice comes in from British Gas and it's within a tolerance of 10%, why does anybody need to actually look at that invoice? Same with a budget type of process. If you've got a budget set up for a supplier, say for £100,000, all invoices can be coded, approved up until 100,000. When it goes over 100,000, then that's when the invoice needs to be looked at and managed. So, I mean, I've got customers where the matching is very, very high. So I've got customer Guinness Northern Counties Housing Association where they're matching 90% of invoices against purchase orders. But I think that only really is achievable through getting the frontline procurement processes sorted out. So if the invoices do not match, then we have the ability to workflow those invoices around the organisation for handling. So the workflow can be fully automatic. Again, what we're trying to do is really try to remove any manual tasks from accounts payable and move them more into strategic roles like process improvement. And so with the workflow can be totally automatic, removing any manual tasks for an AP person to know who to send that invoice to. So, for example, if there is a GRN issue, goods receipt issue, the email and the workflow can go to the requisitioner. If there's a price issue, then the email can go off to the buyer. And as Rob again mentioned with ADT, and one of my customers, the prison service, within 4 months of going live with Basware, they were able to reduce their receipt to approval time down from 45 days down to 10 days. The prison service had lots of problems with supply chain, invoices not being paid on time. You can imagine what it would be like if the food wasn't provided to the prison. So they looked at Basware as a way of really trying to automate accounts payable. And what many organisations are looking to do now is, because they've got accounts payable under control, they've got the receipt to approval time down to an area which they can now potentially start negotiating early payment discounts with suppliers. So Gartner have released some information that you can get between 1 to 5% of rebates or early payment discounts from suppliers. So if you're spending, say, 600 million, that could be between sort of 1 to 5 million pounds. So Basware is a real enabler to help with early payment rebates and discounts. So to summarise, the benefits of e-invoicing and invoice automation: reduced cost, no postage cost for the suppliers, the actual service is cheaper than a postal system. You've got no staff having to key in the invoice data. You've got real-time data coming in particular line-level information. Line-level capture from a scanning and data capture perspective is quite difficult to capture. You can't always capture every line. Obviously, with electronic invoice, you get a much richer form of data and enables the matching process to be more effective. So certainly for manufacturing organisations where matching needs to be linked into a stock system, line level capture and line level matching or line level electronic invoices is really beneficial. The VAT compliance, we are totally 100% EU compliant in terms of VAT. So because we have a global reach, we're compatible with all of the VAT compliance standards within the EU. We can accept multiple formats, as I said earlier on, take away the pain for suppliers that they have a standard XML format, your systems have a standard XML format, so we take away that pain, we offer that conversion service. Obviously from the environmental perspective, there's no paper, so it can help with reducing your carbon footprint. Security, we have the concept of digital signatures, so you can guarantee that the file has not changed since it was set. And as I said, finally, we are international in our reach, so we have various different scanning centres and various different e-invoicing partners globally. So if we're not particularly strong in one particular geographical region in terms of connecting suppliers, then that is not a problem to getting your e-invoicing adoption up. We can integrate with these other e-invoicing operators. So the e-invoicing roadmap is to eliminate paper, outsource the scanning and capture from day one. That gives you 100% electronic invoicing. At the same time, looking at a supplier activation program where we will take the existing suppliers, and let's say, for example, there are, say, 30 suppliers that you want to connect to our e-invoicing network. It could be that 10 to 15 of them are already connected to us or to other e-invoicing providers. If they're not, that's when we have the supplier activation program where we work in partnership with customers to target suppliers to really persuade them gently and to really try to sort of bring them on board with good, strong, value-based propositions to make it worth their while. I have seen some customers where that's been unsuccessful, and they then sort of move to when the sourcing takes place to put in the contract that this supplier has to then deal with, or this contract can only be let to suppliers that are able to trade electronically. And you know, as I made the point earlier on, we've got a solution for all types of suppliers, SMEs, right up to the global operators. Okay, and I'm now going to move on to a case study with Lloyd's Pharmacy, who are one of our existing customers, who actually made the journey from using Basware just for initially invoice automation into now using us for our e-invoicing service. So I'm sure you've all heard of Lloyd's Pharmacy. I was there today buying some moisturiser, one of the major retailers within the UK, a global organisation, I believe, with 2 billion turnover, and they make significant value out of using Basware. They were going through significant growth, as ADT were, and the value proposition for them really was to get a solution in, a platform really, that would enable them to have the growth without increasing the number of staff within the organisation. So they increased their volume by 40%, and now they're processing 129,000 invoices per full-time employee. Now that is particularly high. World-class performance is anything from 25 to 55,000 invoices per full-time employee. A lot of the invoices that do come in are coming in through EDI. However, 225,000 of these invoices were, 232,000 were coming in a paper format. So they have moved over to the Basware E-invoicing service. They've got an audit trail now. They've got faster accrual reporting, and said the next step for them was the E-invoicing service. So, as said, they've got 232,000 invoices currently received as paper, and I suppose it's the old 80-20 rule that 70% of the invoices come from 70% of suppliers. So what we offer customers is a pre-agreed conversion rate for transferring these paper invoices into electronic invoices. So, we have a contract with Lloyd's Pharmacy, and this is how we operate in terms of going back to the increasing level of automation whilst at the same time reducing costs. We have a guaranteed contract that provides that cost saving. In that, what we said with Lloyd's is that for year one, we would guarantee that 58,000 invoices would come across electronically. Year 2, 116,000, and year 3, 160,000. So, for us, because we have a network, it's more cost effective for us to process an electronic invoice than a paper invoice, and we can then pass those savings on to our customers. And that is a pre-agreed agreement that is within a contract with a customer. And in particular, this one here just illustrates that the conversion rates are quite high. So Basware not only is a company that has a high heritage in invoice automation, Basware is an enterprise purchase-to-pay organisation, and we have a solution that offers companies vital cross-functional visibility and control between purchasing and accounts payable processes. Specifically, this integrated solution covers the entire process from purchase requisition creation to invoice payment, as I've just presented. The Basware Enterprise Purchase to Pay solution is a proven package automation solution for large and medium-sized organisations across industries worldwide. As Rob said, he's been working with ADT, I've been working with the prison service. So public sector and experience with corporates as well. As an integral part of the Basware Purchase to Pay solution, Basware Procurement Solutions let organisations manage their procurement process. Traditional procurement processes is often time-consuming, complex and difficult to oversee. Time and money are wasted on error-prone manual methods. Responsibilities and policies are imprecise, leading companies to perform purchasing through various off-contract channels. These conditions combined make it challenging for organisations to control the purchasing process or manage spending. And with integration and electronic efficiency, Basware Procurement Solutions handles an organisation's total procurement process from end to end, offering benefits in the following key areas, and this is really the nut of this slide, in that we can enable employee self-service through intuitive, easy-to-use application and tool, ensuring that the solution is straightforward and adopted. We all know that if an e-procurement solution is clunky and not easy to use, then the adoption rate will not be high, and we have customers that are using us with lots of spend under control with high adoption rates. We can achieve compliance and efficiency through automation, and if we can automate the procurement process, then organisations can streamline transactional handling and eliminate error-prone manual methods. Plus, automation enforces adherence to documented approval policies and provides complete audit trail from requisition, creation to invoice payment. Track spending. Every purchase transaction is recorded in the system, in the ERP, in the Basware Purchase to Pay database, enabling a clear picture of what constitutes organisational spend by category, by supplier, by item and more. One of the key things in starting any P2P process is to ensure that the spend analysis is conducted up front. And we've seen customers where they've been able to extract data from their ERP system at line level, or where customers have started off with with Basware invoicing first and added procurement on top, and Basware on the invoicing side has been able to give that spend analysis at a line level, which has enabled then for the right decisions to be made in terms of that you've got £200 million worth of spend. How do we then ensure control with that spend? So what categories of that spend are able to be managed by catalogues, by free text, or by internal catalogues, or by punch-out. So spend analysis is the starting place for any purchase-to-pay contract, any purchase-to-pay project, excuse me. Utilising contracts, again, if we can get users using contracts, buying from suppliers that have contracts, then we can generate between 15 and 20% savings. So making contracts readily available encourages employees to purchase through a preferred supplier rather than engage in maverick off-contract buy-in. And then finally, being able to, just the whole thing around cost control, to manage cost, an organisation must control spending before purchasing takes place. And this can be achieved by defining standard products based on contracts that agree the highest overall saving and mandating approval processes for purchasing verification. And paying upon receipt, and on occasion suppliers may invoice before they deliver, recording the receipt of the goods and inspecting the order items ensure that invoices are paid only for orders that are fully fulfilled. Okay, and last couple of slides for me is just to talk about one of our existing customers that are using us for purchase to pay, using us for procurement and invoicing. So Acco brands, they had decentralized procurement and invoicing processes. They had different systems. There was a merge between Acco and GBC. Each functional area was just doing their own thing. There was no real joined-up strategy. There was no global purchasing or strategy at all. Everyone was just doing their own thing. Lots of maverick buy-in. And these guys, they moved to a shared service centre. Okay, so phase one for them, interestingly, was to start off on the invoicing side. Now, if you do have a greenfield situation, then we would recommend that looking at a joined-up P2P project rather than starting off on the invoicing side. But these guys wanted to get quick wins. So phase one for them was to reduce overheads and define a way of working, which is moving to a shared service centre and implementing the Basware invoice automation system. This enabled them to get that control and start to get this spend visibility that I referred to earlier. They then decided in phase two to focus on procurement, and they started off with implementing just free text, which for some people is a simple way of starting to get this spend analysis data. So with free text, we can set the system up, and these guys have done this where you mandate the use of completing coding information that then can drive the spend analysis. And then once you've got the spend analysis, that's when you can start to define, well, should we start to use certain catalogues, or should we punch out to suppliers' websites, or should we use a marketplace, or should we continue to use free text, for example, for services? There's never going to be a catalogue, is there, for services? So just continue to use free text. And then these guys are following the same route that Lloyds and ADT have, and they're moving over to electronic invoices as phase three. So the benefits for Acco, they are now fully operational in their shared service centre. Electronic orders are routing 100% to suppliers. They have an approval workflow for orders and invoices. They're in control now of the process rather than the process being in control of them. And the collaboration between procurement and finance has improved, and moving finance and procurement from a little value operation into a strategic value operation, and finally decreasing the maverick spend. Okay, so in terms of next steps, if you want to know more about Basware, then we can engage on a one-to-one basis. There are various different ways that we can help benchmark your current P2P operation. We can meet with you, we can understand a little bit more about your processes, Also, I think we're also running a couple of seminars coming up in the next couple of months that we will be delighted to invite you to. And we're now going to hand over to Susie.
Thank you very much indeed, Paul. Just wrapping up this this webinar before we move to questions with the final poll of the session. What is the percentage of your invoices, what percentage of your total invoice volume are electronic today? So if you could respond to that, please. What percentage of your total invoice volume on your accounts payable side are electronic today? And when we say electronic, we are specifically talking about the receipt of electronic data rather than just receipt of an emailed PDF. So less than 20%, 20 to 40%, 40 to 60, 60 to 80, or more than 80%. So 72% of you voted. If you haven't already do so, please do so now. Closing the poll in 3, 2, 1. 74% of you voted. Let's have a look at the data coming up on your screen now. So we do have from 2% representing more than 80% of their invoices are electronic. So you are very much still in the minority, as you can see, representing a very mature organisation. So the organisations that tick more than 80% electronic, you really are pioneers still very much in this space. And I imagine you've been rolling out electronic invoicing for quite some time. There's a little bit of a pyramid structure going on there with 21% between 20 and 40% electronic. We heard from the statistics shared earlier about, it's generally thought that around 10% of all the 30 billion invoices exchanged in Europe each year are electronic. And obviously Scandinavia is more mature than Western Europe. Western Europe is still very much behind as far as those numbers are concerned. So those that tick the 20 to 40% electronic, again, representing a good level of maturity there, and with just shy of 70% with less than 20% of their invoices electronic. So now let's move to some questions. They're coming through thick and fast. So let me ask some of those questions now, please. So we've got a question for either Rob or Paul. How do you mitigate or work around cultural differences while implementing a global automation program?
Paul, do you want me to take that one?
Yeah, happy for you to take that, Rob.
Yeah, sure. It's a very good question. ADT had to undertake that very thing, and then their methodology was to put together an internal committee to steer the training. So they had they ran roadshows. We were part of that, and we ran several roadshows across the UK to bring on their business units as phase 2 of the program, because we realised that the change management had been underestimated in the first aspect. So there's a number of clients doing that with us globally now, where we're actively running these roadshows and panels to bring in the business and to sort of evangelise the whole concept of us as a strategic partner for said customer. So hopefully that answers the question, Susie.
Okay, so moving on. It's quite a bit of a process-oriented question here. As far as the PO table and the information on goods receipts, the retrieval of that and the kind of the frequency with which that is updated, with the solution that we've been talking about today, how often is the PO table and the goods received note information, how often is that data actually updated?
Okay, it's very much dependent on the ERP itself and obviously the volatility of the data. So with the more, shall we say, mature ERPs, the more enterprise level, then that online live interaction with that volatile data is more readily available. So it really depends on the ERP and the actual line of business and the solution itself. But ADT are currently running a nightly upload of receipts and purchase order information that we're using to automate against. And we have other customers who are using a live sort of push and pull scenario. So both options.
Okay, so you're saying that it's really down to the client as to how regularly they would like that to be updated. Is that correct?
Yeah, the client and the back-end system, Susie, I would say.
Okay, thank you. Also, is it also possible to read invoices for approval before they are sent to the customer's ERP?
Paul, do you want that one?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a workflow engine within the system, and so the workflow can route the invoice to a user. If it's a PO-based invoice, then we can pick up the rules from, let's say, for example, there's a problem with receipting, so we can pick up that we need to send that invoice off to the requisitioner, or if there's a price difference or a quantity difference, then the business rule can be set up so that we can route the invoice off maybe to the buyer. We also can deal with the non-PO based invoices, and these can be routed out via a really, really nice interface to a user, and that's where they would code the invoice and then approve it or review it and then send it back to AP for approval.
Okay, thank you very much. So I think the short answer to that question is it's very possible. You can certainly see and approve the invoice before it actually hits the ERP itself. What percentage of invoices should match first time for you to be representing best practice? So who'd like to take that question? What, in your opinion, what percentage of invoices should be matching first time for them to be qualified as a best practice organisation?
Yeah, I'll take that one. It's an interesting question, and one that's quite quite difficult to answer without any background information, because obviously there's so many factors that you need to evaluate. You know, i.e., what's your PO coverage, what's your compliance, etc., etc. But if you are a very high compliant organisation regarding POs, then I would say anything over 60% should be deemed, you know, a success.
Okay, because I think, and again, you're right, because it depends on the kind of the context of what's included in the scope. So I think there are organisations, and they're very much in the 90s as far as their first-time match rates are concerned, and they have certain tolerances put in place. So if an invoice is over a certain amount but under the tolerance, or if it's not actually doesn't actually have a purchase order on it, but it's come from a certain supplier, then these invoices can actually just wash straight through the system without actually being approved. So there are some organisations who are in the mid-90s and top performing, so really top 10% as far as Hackett are concerned, are really looking over the 90% on the actual first-time match rate, which is the top 10%, and it does mean that the medians are still very much in the kind of the really the kind of the 60s and 70s. So those top 10%, we are talking about the exceptional shared services organisations, but they are clearly doing something very right to get there. Okay, we have time for one last question before we close off for the day. So a very, very quick question for you, Rob, and really only a few seconds to answer this. How did Tyco manage their as-is analysis, and how would you recommend this be done? Did they do workshops? Did they get a consultant in? What did they do?
Yeah, they undertook it themselves with help from us. So they did the initial as-is study, and they brought us in then specifically to focus on the AP process and workflow tasks. So it was an internal partnership between the two of us.
Okay, good. We are out of time, ladies and gentlemen. Please do join me next Tuesday. Make time in your diary for that now, where we have NSG, the organisation that bought out Pilkington Glass. The shared services leader from there is joining us to talk about how they have aligned finance and procurement and driven up PO compliancy. So please make time for that in your diary for next Tuesday, 3 o'clock UK time, and you can see a number of conferences that we've got coming up there. We have 2 final available tickets for our E-invoicing masterclass taking place in Berlin for 1 day only next Thursday. If you'd like to take one of those last 2, please do get in contact with me now. For the time being, thank you very much to Paul Sanford. Thank you to Rob Rooney and the team from Basware. Thank you to you, and look forward to welcoming you next time. Goodbye.